Hi everybody, this is Scott Dudley from SaaS Startup Stories, and today my special guest is Matt Ostanik. Matt is based in Iowa and is the founder at Grateful, where businesses give to nonprofits that matter most to their customers and employees. Matt, you ready to rock and roll?
I am, Scott. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. All right, so we usually start off with your background and what initially got you interested in starting a SaaS company.
Yeah, great question. I will give you two answers to that, actually. Grateful is my fourth startup company. So I have some experience in building them, but the two short versions, one, what got me started in SaaS years ago with my very first one. I actually started my career working as an architect. I went to school for that, thought I would be designing buildings for a living, and I was always passionate about that when I was a kid growing up. And when I was working at an architecture firm out of college, I was frustrated at the time with all the back and forth paperwork that was going on commercial construction projects that I was working on and that our firm was working on. And I came up with an idea for a software tool, an online software tool, today what we would call SaaS, to help manage that way more effectively. And told my wife I was going to go work on that for 3 years and then go back to being an architect after that. And that was about 17 years ago. And realized that SaaS is a lot of fun. That was my very first business, a construction software business, but SaaS is a lot of fun. I love creating and building things and bringing visions to life. That's part of why I loved architecture, but also what I love about creating SaaS as well. But Grateful is my fourth company today, as I mentioned. And the reason I started that was a real desire to use technology for social good. And I know we're going to talk more about that in our conversation here, but that was the real driver for this newest one.
Fair enough. So what, did you sell the other three, or are you still working on some of those?
I've had great learning opportunities with all of them. To quickly run through the list, my very first company, my construction software company, sold to a larger construction tech firm that worked for that company for a couple of years on their executive team. While I was on the executive team, we did an IPO in the New York Stock Exchange, which was a terrific experience. And that company then in turn was acquired by Oracle. And some of the former people in my former product are part of Oracle's construction software division today. That was a really cool outcome. I also started after that. I left that company to start another SaaS company in the marketing technology space. Spent several years working on that, had a really nice product. Unfortunately, was not as successful as the first one. Ended up having to close that one down after realizing it was going to be way more expensive to compete in that space than I initially thought it would be. Started a consulting company after that. That was a true startup. But with a different model for consulting and helping actually small design firms grow their businesses. And that has turned into a terrific business. And I actually sold my majority interest in it to one of my key employees, the CEO of it earlier this year as well. He's built a fantastic team and has done a great job growing that business and has now taken it over fully. And then, of course, there's Grateful, which is still an early stage startup and a work in progress today.
Excellent. All right. So did you borrow VC money to launch Grateful, or did you bootstrap it instead? Tell me a bit about how you got it off the ground.
Yeah, Grateful is bootstrapped, self-funded as well, but intentionally as an early stage startup, I try to keep our expenses really light. One of the things I've learned is it's important to manage your expenses very carefully in any business, of course, but particularly where you're still getting off the ground, to learn how to do things more efficiently and more effectively. Absolutely.
Okay. So would you say there's anything that you would change about your approach if you had to do it over again?
Always good lessons learned. You in building SaaS companies, again, I've had successes and failures with it. I'm very happy with the progress we've made and grateful. Overall, I think a key is to know when to pour extra fuel on the fire, when to add gas to the fire, to grow it consistently, but to not grow it too fast as well. And I've lived both sides of that in the companies that I've built in the past.
Yeah, obviously having three gut cracks at it before would have helped as well. That very beneficial.
Yes, you learn a lot from it. I love SaaS because the opportunity to create, to build, to do industry changing things, but I also love the continuous learning. Keeps you humble as you're building companies like this, because you're always learning as you go and figuring out what works, and you think you master it in one, but industries change, technology has changed, times change as well. So it keeps it incredibly exciting.
So when was Grateful launched?
I started working on Grateful in 2019.
Right.
And really started selling, brought on a couple of very early customers, but really didn't start marketing it and selling it more broadly until mid last year in 2021.
Okay. Yeah, so that sort of leads us into the next question. How did you get your first 10 customers through the doors?
Yeah, I think what's really critical in any SaaS company, and I'm sure you hear this with others that you speak with on your great show, getting out there as founders and knocking on doors, finding those early customers. It's incredibly important to people to do that. No one's going to be as good as selling your initial idea as the founder of the company. And going out and figuring out who those early customers are really validates your hypothesis about what you're building and who you're serving with it as well. So with Grateful in particular, of most of our customers, 95% of them have actually come from email marketing and doing outreach, looking for other socially good businesses. And I mentioned that, Scott, because I know it's a topic that's close to your heart as well. But email marketing has been very important for us to find other customers, and particularly we're looking for socially good businesses. So businesses that care about giving back, supporting charities, making an impact beyond just growing their own internal operations and revenue. And the best way to find that has been to do outreach by email directly to business owners and business leaders and ask them about their values and talk about whether they're open to exploring something like Grateful.
Excellent. All right, so I guess we could get into a bit more detail about the actual Grateful product and what sets it apart from the competition.
Yeah, great question. So Grateful, as you explained very well earlier with your intro to me, is a platform where socially good businesses give to their customers and their employees' favorite charities. And it's a way to give back, but it's a way to deepen relationships with customers and employees. We live in a time today where social good and making a difference has never been more important. There's a large majority of people that care about giving, that care about supporting nonprofits, that care about the many, many problems facing our world today. And they believe that business plays a role in solving problems and contributing to that and doing good. The days when businesses could just keep their heads down and focus on their own profits and themselves, I think, are mostly over. Certainly not everyone agrees with these values and does this, but for businesses that choose to focus on social good, it's the right thing to do. It's a great fit with today's values, but it's also a way to grow more successfully. Some interesting stats that we've seen. Again, not every single person believes in giving, but the majority do. And of those that care about it, 91% say that they are more likely to do business with companies that are willing to support charities that they personally care about as well. So with the Grateful platform, they can give to each individual charity that 10 customers or 100 or 1,000 different charities that 1,000 different customers support. And in addition, when companies implement customer giving programs like that, the customers that choose to participate will spend on average 17% more per year with your business as well. So companies do this type of thing. They work with Grateful because it's the right thing to do, but it also leads to greater growth for their businesses as well. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And where you're saying the right thing to do, it reminds me a little bit about sustainability. There's a lot of like emphasis on doing that now as well. So it's sort of along that sort of same path, isn't it, of doing good?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally it's a question of, do you care about other people? Do you care about your communities and our societies? Again, most people know that you have to say yes to be polite. Maybe not every single person actually does act that way in their day-to-day, but the majority feel that in their hearts and want to live in a world where we're giving back and supporting and helping others in need. And that's really what I mean when I say it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so how would you say social good is the new currency? I mean, that's an interesting concept.
Well, and that ties into my previous comments. Maybe I got ahead of myself.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
right. But giving back and social good has never been more important. There's tremendous opportunities with it. Most people care about it. And there's a very incredible generational shift happening around this with the way younger generations believe in the importance of this, the way that they're willing to talk about it publicly. Because in older generations, certainly older generations and older business leaders, they cared, they gave back as well, but they tended to view it as more of a private matter, something that did personally and didn't talk about a lot. But in today's younger generations, they want to know what companies are doing. They want to know how they're making an impact. And then they're willing to include that in their personal decision-making about who they take a job with, who they shop from and do business with, where they spend their money. These are very important considerations with the generational shifts that are happening right now as well.
Makes sense, yeah. All right, so what about using social good for customer appreciation and loyalty?
Yeah, and that's, again, probably got a little bit ahead of myself in my comments there, but it's incredibly powerful when companies use that when you reach out to your customers and say, hey, we care about you, and as part of this, we're going to donate to something that you care about as well. That deepens their relationships with those customers and clients. It's fascinating to me how many different types of causes that people care about, right? You mentioned sustainability earlier.
Yeah.
Certainly, there are many people that care about sustainability, environmental causes. There
Mm.
are also people that are passionate about hunger, about food insecurity, about refugees and immigration, about veterans and the others that have served our countries and our world. There's people that are passionate about animals and animal related causes. There's people that are passionate about diversity and racial equity and all the topics in that space that are so important to our society right now. There's a list of 100, 200 different topics more that I could give you.
Yeah.
Different people care about different things, oftentimes because of their own personal experiences, what
True.
they've struggled with, or they've seen other family members struggle with as well. But by a company saying, hey, we care enough about you to give to something that you care about that's close to your heart, that's just an incredible act of generosity, but it also builds deeper customer loyalty as well. And it's a win-win. It helps great causes that are making an impact, but it also helps businesses deepen those customer relationships, which means those customers over time will spend more and stay as a customer for longer as well.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, is there many other companies doing similar stuff to what you're doing?
There's a lot of startup activity in the social good and charitable giving space, which is
Okay.
terrific. We're fortunate with Grateful. We don't have anything that I would call out as a true apples to apple competitor, but there certainly are a lot of companies that are focusing. There are a lot of companies that provide software for fundraising to nonprofits, which is not specifically what Grateful does. We primarily serve socially good businesses, and then we support nonprofits with their donations. But there are a lot of other tools that nonprofits can use and charities can use to raise money.
Mm.
There's a lot of startups with activity in the workplace giving environment, so specifically focusing on employee giving, which is a really cool and active space.
Mm.
But there's also not a lot of direct apples to apples competition with what Grateful is focusing on, particularly with the customer giving programs that our customers run using our platform.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I'd never heard of it before, which sort of leads me into my next question, maybe why technology companies and startups aren't talking enough about social good.
Yeah, and actually, one of the reasons I was excited to appear on your show, Scott, is I know you talk a lot about SaaS, telling SaaS stories, working with other SaaS leaders. It's an audience that is close to my heart, dear to my heart as well, since that's where I live and work today. Also, I think in the SaaS community, we have a major problem. We're too self-absorbed. We build creative, amazing companies that are doing very impactful things, but we're very focused internally on our industry. And I don't think we talk enough about social good and public good. It's actually really interesting. As I mentioned, I've really lived in two different careers. I started out working as an architect designing buildings, and then I transitioned into technology and SaaS startups in particular. But I've seen two different career tracks from that. And starting my career as an architect in the architectural space in that profession, public good is a foundational concept. Like if you're designing buildings, you're thinking about the communities those buildings are in and the people that use them. Like you can't get through architecture school or operate as an architect without becoming very aware of that and having many conversations around that. And those conversations about SaaS impact on public good are strangely absent in this space. Not zero, they're definitely out there if you know where to look.
Yeah, okay.
They're strangely not as much of a theme as they need to be. And I'll give you a specific example. There's a large conference, you're probably familiar with it, SaaStr in San Francisco each year.
I've heard of it, yes.
A terrific SaaS conference that many people attend. I'm a huge fan of it. Incredible education to help people growing SaaS companies. But back when I first started working on Grateful in 2019, I was looking at the agenda for SaaStr and the couple hundred sessions that they were offering that year about SaaS companies, right? Topics you'd be very familiar and comfortable with from the topics you talk about on your show too.
Yeah.
Sales, how do you grow revenue, customer retention, building technology, raising investment dollars, all those things that go into building a great SaaS company. Out of about 200 sessions, though, they had 2 sessions on ethics, dozens and dozens of sessions on raising money and making more sales and building good technology, 2 sessions on ethics that year. And I still remember the one session in particular, the headline or the main point was ethical at being a SaaS company means don't go to jail. That's the definition of being ethical. And it's like, really, that's the bar in our industry, is that don't hurt other people. That's all you got to do. Or if you do hurt other people, just don't get caught. And I I find that disappointing in the space that we're in. I think we can do a better job talking about using SaaS to do incredible public good and social good as well. By the way, I did look at that same conference's agenda recently because it's happening again as you and I are recording this
Yeah.
right now as well. And this year there aren't any sessions on ethics. It's all focused on other topics as well. But there's an absence there of talking about how the work that we're doing in building amazing SaaS companies can really not just make great return for our investors, not just do cool new technology things, but we need to do more for the public good and social good.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, their priorities are obviously not for social good. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and I should be careful as I say this. There
Mm.
are SaaS companies that are doing good things with social good. There are companies that are building things with that in mind. It's not a complete absence, but it's definitely not the top of mind topic that's being covered in industry chatter. And that's
Mm.
something we need to change in this space and spend more time dialoguing about.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so if we switch gears a little bit and get back to email marketing, maybe, and how you're using it to convert trials to customers and retain existing customers.
Yeah, I think email marketing is a incredible tool when used properly, right? The trick is to do it correctly. But
Mm.
certainly email marketing that we're doing with Grateful, we reach out to socially good businesses to help them. And you said something earlier, right? When you said about Grateful that you hadn't heard of it before or hadn't heard of this concept.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. That's what I hear most of the time, because this is a new and evolving area that most businesses aren't out there shopping for these types of products yet. They will
Mm.
be at some point in the future, but we're really developing a new market with what we're doing with Grateful. And because of that, we have to do outreach, right?
Yep.
It's not like we're out there running Google searches or reading
Okay.
review sites
Yeah.
looking for the best provider in this space. It's not top of mind for most yet. And because of that, we've relied heavily on email marketing to reach out to business leaders and to introduce them to Grateful and to start the conversation about how this could benefit their companies and their customers and their employees as well. But you have much deeper experience with this than I do. But when I'm giving advice to others on email marketing, the three key things as I look at it is who you're targeting, who your audience is. Do you really understand that and have the right data to reach out to those folks? That's number one. Number two, what are you saying to them? And again, I
Mm.
know it's got much deeper experience with that than even I do, but what are you saying? What's the messaging? What's the copywriting? What's the content? How are you presenting that to them? And then third, email marketing is, it's not rocket science, but it's incredibly technical. If you don't know all the details about how to manage your accounts, your sending, things like DMARC and SPF and
Yeah.
DKIM and other technical things that go into getting emails seen in people's inboxes. Those are all the three important areas. And honestly is why a lot of companies do it poorly or don't mess with email marketing at all. But I believe it can be a very valuable tool for startups and for SaaS startups in particular when utilized properly.
So what about when you're first reaching out to people? What's the call to action there? Is it to get them into a meeting, or how do you sort of kick off the conversation?
Yeah, we've tested a variety of different things. And I don't know if I have a clear answer on actually what works best. It kind of depends on what
Okay.
we're trying to target at a particular time.
Yeah.
Certainly, one call to action is, hey, do you want to be willing to have a conversation about it and hop on a short demo to learn more about Grateful? It's always great to be able to do that.
Mm.
I got to one point in the past when I was doing email marketing before I hired my first account executive for Grateful that I was actually generating too many demos from that and too many interesting conversations. Like I couldn't keep up. I couldn't schedule them fast enough, which is a good problem to have.
Yes.
As well. But then I started testing with using a simple explainer video and sharing that with folks is a great way to introduce the concept
Oh,
and
yeah.
to get warmed up and to use that as a way to evaluate, are they just curious or are they really a good fit? Part of what we've been looking for in this space with Grateful at the current time, 2022, is early adopters too, folks that are willing to try something new to see how it works and to give us feedback and to demonstrate how important this is. And so oftentimes, sharing that type of information, explainer videos, sharing those through email can work great to help find the folks that are just curious versus those that are actually willing to step
Yeah.
up and consider doing something new as well.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. All right. So what would you say is the single biggest challenge that you believe most entrepreneurs are experiencing right now with growing SaaS companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends on the stage of the SaaS company, of
Well,
course,
that's
but
true. Yeah. Yeah.
when you start out, right, product market fit, making sure you've got the right product that's serving a need in a specific market where you're able to grow that successfully and in a cost efficiently way, cost effectively over time as well. And then once you get past that initial point, I think, one of the biggest challenges that SaaS entrepreneurs have, it depends on their past experience and where they come from, but learning how to grow a team, getting the right people on the bus, building the team successfully with the right skill sets. And that always takes some learning and some trial and error as you build, but scaling up, there's a big difference between just you versus 3 or 5 people versus 10 people versus 50 versus 500. Those all are different challenges, but going through that growth curve, it drives your company. When you get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seats, it makes you very successful, but there's also a lot of learning and a lot of challenge that goes into doing that successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this is probably my favorite question. What's your favorite business book?
Yeah, what a great question. And it's tough, right?
Yeah, to pick one, it is tough.
You have a book list somewhere of every answer you've ever gotten to this in all your interviews. It would be kind of cool to see that, by the way.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. A couple that come to mind to me, a classic one decades ago, but I'm a fan of Jim Collins, Good to Great, Built to Last. Some of those very traditional business books. They were
getting the right people on the bus. Yeah.
Yes, they were very popular when I was working on my MBA years ago.
Yes.
And always still a fan of Jim Collins, all of his great work. More recently, well, and this one's actually not that recent either, but I think one of the most important ones is actually Crucial Conversations. Are you familiar with that book?
No, I'm not actually.
Yeah, Crucial Conversations is a must read for anybody in a business leadership position. And I don't know the date on it. I don't know if it's 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I read it for myself first time probably about 10 years ago. It's about how to manage difficult conversations, crucial conversations, when the stakes are high and emotions run strong and opinions vary. So basically disagreements, but in business context when stakes are high, right? When you're trying to make key business decisions, but people aren't agreeing, or when there's conflict on your team, which is okay. Conflict is natural when you're growing, but being able to manage that in a way that builds trust, through it in a healthy way and keeps your team ultimately aligned and on board versus fracturing. Crucial Conversation is a fantastic tool for that. Okay. And then more recently, I'm a big fan of Adam Grant and some of his books. And one that's been particularly influential for me has been Give and Take, which is one of his older ones now, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe it's 10 years ago, but Give and Take is a fantastic book about how people engage in social interactions and their views on how they reciprocate in their relationships with others. You could apply it to your personal life as well, but I think it's incredibly valuable in a business context.
Okay, perfect. All right, so what are you curious about or researching right now regarding SaaS and software in general? Great thing. So I already gave you my plug about Social Good, right? I'm promoting that in the space. But in terms of software and tech in particular, I'm also a big evangelist for Flutter. Are you familiar with Flutter? No, got no idea what that is.
Okay. Yeah. Flutter's an SDK or framework supported by Google, launched 5 or 6 years ago for cross-platform development. And it's basically, it's amazing. It's if you're familiar probably with a React Native, it's not to say anything negative about React Native because it's got a huge base of support and many apps built in it, of course. But Flutter is a newer, more modern version to do a way to build things across multiple devices and platforms. And give the quick backstory on it for myself. When I first was launching Grateful, I built an iOS app in Swift, originally conceived it just as a mobile app. And then I had some people using Android that wanted to become early beta users, so built an Android version in Kotlin. And then I had people starting to say, oh, we work with businesses, we want to use this in web on our desktop. And so I launched a Python version with Django. And, as a sole developer at the time, trying to maintain 3 different code bases just to keep up with features. I mean, it's impossible. Doable, but you're going to consume your whole life doing that. And I had somebody that I respect say, hey, you should check out this thing called Flutter. And I'd never even heard of it. And then went and started to dig into it and started to get advice and help from others that were more experienced in Flutter. And it truly is amazing. You can publish iOS, Android, and web apps all from a single shared code base. Makes it incredibly easy to publish across platform. It's what we built Grateful in today. And more recently, they've also added support for native desktop, Mac OS, and Windows applications as well, which we're not doing with Grateful. We're just web and mobile apps. But it's Flutter in many ways, I think, is the future of development for being able to do platforms, tools that you want to operate across many different types of operating systems and devices, if that makes sense. Sorry
Yeah.
for the long on that too, but I'm passionate about that as well.
Yeah, no, interesting. Yeah, fair enough. All right, yeah. So just to wrap up, where can people go to find out more about Grateful?
Yeah, I'd love to have you check out our website, begrateful.org. It's begrateful.org. Lots of great information there. A great way to log in and check out our app as well, and a way to schedule a conversation for any folks that'd like to learn more or continue the discussion from today.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Matt. I appreciate it. It was great.
God, thank you so much for having me today. What a pleasure to speak with you.
Awesome.